Ladies and gentlemen, I am Yusril, the game is Star Trek Online, and welcome to a first look at the Patrol Escort refit, otherwise known as the Tempest-class. The basic Patrol Escort has been around since the game launched, and it enjoys a reputation as being a very solid selection for a newly minted Rear Admiral, mostly because of the extra durability from its Engineering Ensign and the third Engineering Console slot. At Vice Admiral, however, even an upgrade to fleet level, the Maelstrom class, can't save it from being regarded as outgunned by escorts with 5 tactical consoles and lacking anything distinctive to compete with newer and flashier hulls. Until now. Cryptic have released 2 new variants of the Patrol Escort for Vice Admirals. The basic Tempest costs 2,500 Zen, and the fleet hull can be had for 4 fleet modules, decreasing to 1 if you already own the basic Tempest. It's worth noting that owning the now retired Maelstrom will not get you any discount on the fleet Tempest, and existing Maelstroms do not get an overhaul, but I'll come back to that later on. So, what do you get? For the most part, it's standard fare for an Escort refit, a 4-3 weapons fit, approximately, with the ability to load dual cannon, 31,500 hull, a 0.95 shield multiplier, and a 522 console setup, with the fleet version gaining the expected 10% increase in hull and shields, along with a third engineering console. Bridge seating includes the expected Commander Tactical, a Lieutenant Commander Engineering. Like the basic version, the Tempest emphasises engineering over science, a Lieutenant Science to cover the basics, because even the most hardened Mako has to admit the eggheads have their uses, and that's where the fun stuff starts, because along with the Nadion bomb console and the Tempest tailgun, the Tempest mounts a universal Lieutenant Commander station. This is a new bit of power creep, although Cryptic have flirted with it before. The Chimera has a universal Lieutenant Commander with lieutenants in both Science and Engineering, the Doderex refit has both Science and Engineering Lieutenant Commanders, and the Dysons have their dynamic bridge setup, but the Tempest, along with the Undine Lockbox ships, is the first to pair a universal Lieutenant Commander with another Lieutenant Commander station, and it opens up some very interesting possibilities. Slotting Tactical gives you a traditional damage-heavy build that can just about match any other escort, although the Kamari still has an edge in a static forward guns-only DPS race, while slotting Engineering allows for heavy auxiliary to battery abuse without having to compromise on repair abilities, and slotting Science, if the Makos can stop jeering at the back, well, the advantage of that can be summed up in 2 words: gravity well. The bridge officer setup alone would represent a good reason to get the Tempest, but it has 2 other selling points. The Tempest tailgun is situational. If you were wondering why I referred to the 4-3 setup as being approximate at the start of this video, here's why. The tailgun is a Mark 12 dual phaser cannon with accuracy, damage and arc modifiers that is fixed into a 4th aft weapon slot and is permanently running rapid fire 1 unless it's given the order for either scatter volley or a higher rank of rapid fire. That's all very nice, but conventional reasoning for escort drivers is that whatever you're shooting at is on your nose, not your tail. Leaving aside highly specialised, or if you're feeling less polite, insane builds, the setup that's going to get the most mileage out of this gun is the Bomber. 4 forward cannon to crack the target's shields on the way in, dispersal beta 3 and mines to leave a present next to the target's hull, and then use the turrets and the tailgun to keep the target's shields down while you pull away for your next run and the mines go through their arming cycle. It's less conventional than it used to be, but when you get several closely packed targets and a gravity well to hold them in place, it can be very, very effective, and it gets even more so with the new Omega shearing perk. The Nadion Saturation Bomb is the Tempest's other party piece. Like most special consoles, it confers a unique ability, in this case an initial barrage of 6 bombs, followed by a hazard zone that hits for about 6 to 7% of the initial detonation every second for 10 seconds. It's on a 3-minute cooldown to help keep things reasonably balanced. The damage output from this console is sensitive to weapons power and anything that boosts phaser damage. A decent array of phaser relays will add about 50% or more to the effect, and going from 58 to 125 weapon power added about 100% to the damage. Weapon skills boost things as well, slightly, and initial detonations of about 15,000 are perfectly feasible even for science captains. Since the overlapping nature of the barrage means that up to 3 bombs of 6 can hit each target, anything unlucky enough to get hit by 3 bombs and then stupid enough to linger in the radiation hazard is potentially looking at 75,000 damage or more over 10 seconds. As you might have guessed, this is very effective against close packed groups of weaker enemies, and even a single target will feel a hit from this console. It does require careful use though. At critically low power levels or without boosts to phaser damage, the output is pitiful, so don't bother firing this thing at significantly less than 100 power. And since it requires phaser relays to get the best effect, don't bother using anything other than phasers on the rest of the Tempest's weapons loadout if you want the best possible results. Which is slightly annoying, for me at least, because I prefer plasma on an Escort. That extra damage from the plasma burn is a handy little bonus, but it's not a deal breaker, and every so often phasers give you that glorious moment when the target's shields go offline just as you're starting your attack run. From a looks standpoint, actually it's pretty good. As well as the pre-existing patrol escort models, including the Maelstrom, we have the new Tempest model. Cryptic have managed to take the key elements of Starfleet design, saucer, engineering, hull and nacelles, and produce something that's both distinctive and obviously Starfleet by both compacting the traditional design and effectively flipping it upside down, which also leaves it looking similar to the NX and Akira classes. Weapon hardpoints are modified on the forward saucer rim, and elsewhere it is an Escort after all, and there's a nice level of detail overall. If I have niggles, it's that the fleet window option is visibly unfinished. There are free floating escape pod decals for a start, but hopefully that will get patched in short order. And a personal niggle is that a warship still has what appears to be an exposed and vulnerable bridge, but maybe that's just me. After all, it might be the bar, and even if it is the bridge, this is Star Trek. Nobody can hit a ship's bridge without serious plot-guided weaponry, and anyway, it's the dodgy fuse boxes that you have to watch out for. So, to buy or not to buy, that is the question. Assuming that you're in the market for an Escort, then the answer right now is simple. Buy. Buy, 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 buy. Why am I being so enthusiastic? Because this one hull can fill the role of just about every other Escort available to Starfleet, and occasionally do it better, courtesy of the Universal Lieutenant Commander slot. If you wanted pure damage, then the old options were the Tactical Escort, the Defiant, and the Aquarius, stop laughing at the back there, with their Tactical Lieutenant Commanders. The Tempest can load a Tactical Lieutenant Commander, take the role, and arguably do it better, trading the Defiant's 3rd Tactical Ensign for an Engineering Lieutenant Commander, a slightly thicker hull and improved shields. Against the Kumari and the Bug ship, it's a little less clear-cut. The Kumari has an edge in a theoretical full guns shootout with its 5.2 loadout, but the Tempest's 4.3 has better off-bore firepower, and a Kumari can't even begin to match the Tempest for durability. Against the Jem'Hadar attack ship, it loses out in manoeuvrability but has slightly thicker shields, and even with a Tactical Lieutenant Commander loaded to match the Bug ship's firepower, it still has an Engineering Lieutenant Commander and a Science Lieutenant against an Engine Engineer and 2 Universal Lieutenants, which does make it a bit more durable. As an Engineering Escort, the principal rivals are the Heavy Escort Carrier and the Blockade Runner. Guess what? The Tempest can do engineering as well as those ships, and quite possibly better. Load a Tactical Lieutenant Commander, and the bridge layout is almost the same as these ships, except that instead of a 3rd Tactical Ensign slot, you have a 2nd Tactical Lieutenant Commander, and against the Steamrunner, you have a Lieutenant Commander Engineer and Lieutenant Science against 2 Lieutenant Engineers and an Ensign Science, giving you the same number of powers, 5 overall, but higher average rank and arguably better balanced. Add on the 5th tactical console, and you have a significant firepower advantage that is under your direct control, which the Steam Runner can't do anything to counter, and the Armitage, well, it can give vague suggestions to its fighter wings, but let's face it, that doesn't beat direct control of gunfire. Loading a 2nd engineer onto the Tempest compromises firepower, but you now have twice the engineering slots of the Armitage, a 2nd Lieutenant Commander slot over the Steam Runner. You can load auxiliary to battery without having to seriously compromise on your other engineer abilities, and you've still got respectable firepower. The only thing stopping the Armitage being utterly eclipsed by the Tempest is the hangar bay and the flexibility that that affords. And before anyone brings up the remaining Maelstrom escorts, let's not go there just yet. Finally, we have the bomber role that the Prometheus line used to dominate, with the Science Lieutenant Commander allowing it to deploy its own gravity well to keep targets in place. You guessed it, the Tempest can do that, and do it almost as well. It has to go a bit too science-heavy for an escort to pull it off, deploying a Lieutenant Commander and a Lieutenant, but careful use of a single AUX to bat 1 power mitigates the lack of tactical abilities. The Prometheus does have a Lieutenant and an Ensign tactical to work with by contrast, but still leaves it with slightly better engineering capabilities, a free Lieutenant Commander slot against the Prometheus's Lieutenant, a slight edge in shield capacity, and the tail gun to help suppress a target's shields on the way out. I'm honestly not sure if Cryptic realise quite what they've done with this ship. Previously we've had a situation where each escort had its own little niche. The Defiant was pure tactical, the Prometheus had limited crowd and mobility control, and the Aquarius hauled garbage. Captains may rephrase that as they please. Now we've got the Tempest, which can be configured to fill any of those roles, and in many cases do them slightly better. The net result is that 5 or 6 different escort designs aren't obsolete per se, but there's very little reason to buy any of them when we now have a one-size-fits-all ship. It's also part of a very noticeable power creep in recent weeks. With the release of the Undine lockbox and now the Tempest, we suddenly have several new ships, the Nikor, Dromias and Tempest, that all have one fixed and one universal Lieutenant Commander station. Despite sounding minor, this is quite a significant increase in power. It effectively trades an Ensign slot for a Lieutenant Commander, and the universal station allows significant flexibility. If this is going to be a regular feature for future Starship designs, Cryptic have hinted that the Intrepid might be in line for a revisit, for example. I have to wonder if the rumoured Autumn expansion is going to see an increase in the level capped to Admiral/55, and the introduction of flagship tier hulls at this kind of power level, with a new tier of difficulty and missions to match. Otherwise, the power differential between a newly minted level 50 and a fully repped and geared veteran player just got that little bit wider, and balancing content for both extremes got even harder, even with the distinction between normal and elite modes. A final note has to go to what I call the Maelstrom Controversy. The original Fleet Patrol Escort, also known as the Maelstrom class after its unique model, was a tweak of the basic Patrol Escort, adding the usual 10% shields and hull, an extra engineering console for a 442 layout, and converting the Ensign station to universal. With the release of the Fleet Tempest, the Maelstrom has been withdrawn from the shipyards. Can't be had, unavailable, out of stock, gone. This has happened before. Both the Arkeef and the Galaxy X have had Mark II versions put out to replace the originals, but where those ships had automatic and free upgrades for hulls already in service, the owners of the Maelstrom are, according to Cryptic, not in line for any kind of free upgrade or discount on the Fleet Tempest. As might be imagined, people are slightly unhappy with this. The precedent was set by the earlier replacements, and the replacement of the Maelstrom by the Tempest implies that the Maelstrom wasn't up to standard, despite costing the same as other fleet hulls, so why shouldn't they get an upgrade? The answer, I think, is that the Arkeef and Gal-X changes were comparatively minor, the addition of a hangar bay in both cases, while everything else remained the same, and the Galaxy X's other toys do require the purchase of the other Galaxy variants, most notably the Source of Separation module on the 2000 Zen refit. By contrast, the Fleet Tempest has thicker shields and hull, the tailgun, and a massively improved bridge officer and console layout that leaves it with more in common with the bug ship and the playable knee corps than the basic patrol escort, so I can understand why Cryptic are a little reluctant to give away a ship that basically has almost nothing in common besides the weapon layout and the ship's model. What I'd suggest, however, is a compromise. No upgrade, but allow owners of the Maelstrom to get the Tempest for a reduced price, say 1 or 2 fleet modules, to represent the major internal refit needed to bring them up to Tempest standard, if you feel like role-playing that kind of division. Controversy aside, I'll finish by repeating my conclusion. If you're in the market for a new Starfleet escort, then right now the Tempest is the one to get, be it by Zen or by putting down the cash for fleet modules to get the fleet hull. I have been Yusril, that has been a first look at the new Tempest-class escort, and until next time, farewell.